It's August 10th, 2021. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dana Durnford, your host, the nuclear proctologist.org. You can call in at 709-589-4406, 709-589-4406, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I hear the phone, I'll answer it. If I'm in the house, I don't take it with me in the truck for obvious reasons. Madame Curie, they're still trying to clean up her laboratory, by the way, in France. She lost both of her hands to radiation, but she got a Nobel Prize. She can't hold it or wipe her butt, but she got a Nobel Peace Prize. And set the stage for genocide. Would you eat food from a nuclear wasteland? That's the question tonight. So media in Japan has been showing this picture. It's radioactive, thousands of tons of radiation right alongside of a farmer's field. Is that, yeah, hello? It's Mr. Dana guy.
What happened? What happened to your channel? Oh, very sad. Very sad news, huh?
He sounds like you're heartbroken.
Dana?
How's it going there,
sad.
murderer?
Very
What
sad.
what do you want, murderer?
Mr. Dana, I want to tell you a little story. In Wyoming, a lovely lady, and she homesteading.
Nobody cares about you, pinhead. Go back to molesting sheep or whatever it is you do in your spare time. So would you eat food from a nuclear wasteland? He's from the Japanese embassy in Chicago, by the way. The Tokyo Bureau. As a stalker, right? He wanted to rape me. So, would you eat food grown right alongside of radiation? I'll tell you a story about that. IAEA today admitted there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation, and that there's the International Atomic Energy Agency standard is based on benefit, not safety. Come on, man. Come on. Hey, man, like I'm trying to do a show here. Would you take your finger out of your bum and just leave me alone for a change? IAEA today admits there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation, that the allowable radiation standards are based on benefits, not safety. In other words, they're not based on anthropogenic man-made radiation. So they should be disbanded. Over 16 million Japanese people are irradiated by Fukushima, and that the nuclear experts say 50,000 square miles of Japan is highly contaminated. 50,000 square miles. So would you eat food from that? It's not very hard. You go to the supermarket, just make sure your food is not from Japan. And tell your friends and your families and post that up on your social media sites. Don't eat Japanese food. You can even link back to this video. Many millions need to be evacuated, and that the government has decided to sacrifice them. There is no government. There is this bizarre death cult. It's a serious crime. More than 70% of the country is contaminated by radiation. But that is still melting down. And not only that, now you got all the flowers and trees are releasing radioactive pollen, for instance. And radiation, so you radiate a force, when all those tree leaves fall, they land somewhere, they're radioactive, make the places where they land radioactive, and the water becomes radioactive. You don't want to eat anything from Japan. Officials admit deadly Fukushima meltdown cover-up. It was a cover-up. This is a grave issue. It's an unprecedented nuclear disaster, about as bad as it gets, an unpardonable breach of trust. So the story you're going to see tonight is you don't want to eat anything from Japan or from countries that deal with Japan, because Japan ships it, the food, to other countries. They relabel it and then ship it to your country. Highly radioactive glass rained on Tokyo. Fukushima nuclear fuel with 500 trillion becquerels a kilogram. 500 trillion becquerels per kilogram in Tokyo. In other words, Tokyo has been sacrificed, 36 million people. It does show you that this death cult has no moral compass whatsoever. And you can't eat food from Japan, as you'll see. Alert, Fukushima peaches on sale outside of Japan. Alert. You should be. Don't eat anything from Japan. At least do that much. Don't feed it to your children. Unless you're, if you're going to open a stand in front of a government building or university like Harvard or Yale or Stanford, if you're going to have a food truck there, get Fukushima food and sell it dirt cheap to these people so we can get rid of them. Government to drastically reduce allowable levels of radiation in food. Now, 100 becquerels a kilogram expected by April 2012. The current limit of 500 becquerels per kilogram for radiation for meat, fish, and vegetables is also expected to be lowered by about 1/5 in April. So the upcoming change is welcome, though. Why is it safe to eat contaminated food with 500 becquerels a kilogram of cesium now, but not 6 months from now? Well, what they're doing is they gave the farmers Geiger counters that can, like mine up there, which is in real time, that can only read gamma. It doesn't read beta or alpha or neutrons like plutonium, uranium, curium, lethal fission products. Think about that statement. How long they've been poisoning you for 10 years. Every organism in Fukushima Prefecture is contaminated with radiation, and that the worms are excreting 1.4 million becquerels a kilogram 60 kilometers from the Meltdowns. Would you eat food in that area? The answer better be no, because that's going to murder you ultimately. They're murdering you. And you're not allowed to say murder them, but they're actually murdering you and your friends and your families and your loved ones and people who've never done nothing to Japan. People that have stood alongside of Japan are being murdered. Japan has lost control. They're suffering from radioactive brain damage and a lack of reality. Extreme increase in mortality caused by cardiac diseases in Fukushima. The death rates might give the creeps to some people. In one community in a single month was 12,695 excess people died. That's just in a single month. This is not limited to a single month. That is a frightening statistic. And there's actually people out there saying nobody died at Fukushima. By 2012, there was 1 million excess cancer, and cancer is only one of 1,800 illnesses you'll get from radiation. 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. And they were selling food at 500 becquerels a kilogram, but of course, that's simply, they're only checking for cesium, they're not checking for the other thousands of isotopes. They're not checking for beta or alpha or neutrons. And it's highly doubtful they were checking for gamma. Everybody on the planet should be ashamed of themselves that this has happened. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. 50 becquerels cause permanent lesions to adults' organs. This is absurd. We're finding that girls are having as much as twice as many thyroid lumps as boys. They weren't finding it, the academics were. Moms have a real legitimate reason to get their families out of there. Gunnarsson sold us out, right? There was no reason to put his name in that story. Radiation and health specialists, children with 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium will start to see heart problems. And for the first couple of years, they were selling food at 500 becquerels a kilogram. And so you see some statistics coming up of how that played out. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. And that the New York Times have reported radiation small doses could actually be disproportionately worse, and that doses spread out over time might be more dangerous than doses given all at once. Thyroid abnormalities in 55% of the Fukushima girls tested age 11 to 15. In fact, girls are disproportionately affected by radiation. They're sterilized. This is true in the animal and insect and birds also. Females, we have to protect the females on this planet. We desperately have to protect the females on this planet. Fukushima girls have 3 times more thyroid tumors than boys and 79% more medium-sized tumors than boys. And over 35% of young people tested have thyroid tumors because they all turn into tumors. In one study, it was 13,646 have tumors out of 40,000. Now, the previous pre-Fukushima, play this clip for you. Pre-Fukushima cancer was 1 in a million to 2 per million.
まさに今そこに元気な人が死んでいくんだよね。
But there's clear evidence rates have risen. Before the disaster in 2011, the rate of thyroid cancer was between 1 and 2 cases in every million children.
So 1 to 2 per million. And now we're seeing 13,646 out of 40,000. What you're seeing is 350,000 per million. You went from 1 to 2 per million. So if you eat food from Fukushima, that's going to happen to your children too. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested have diabetes, and we're expecting diabetes in children from Fukushima. And radiation. The head of the Tokyo Area Medical Clinic. Under 3% of children exposed to Chernobyl radiation while in the womb were diagnosed as healthy at age 7. This new scientist, how many people have heard tell them new scientists? They're supposed to be an academic media, right? Newspaper. So their studies over there scaremongering about Fukushima radiation is damaging. That's an actual study. Local official, Japan must be the only place in the entire world with several million becquerels of radioactive isotopes in urban areas. Incomparably highly radioactive blue algae on school routes. But yet, talking about it, you're considered fear-mongering. 10 billion times in Tokyo, radioactive gas from near Tokyo from Fukushima was at 10 billion times the normal level soon after 3/11. And this was recorded at all monitoring posts in the northern hemisphere. Fukushima radiation dose was equivalent to an X-ray, said, is a study from New Scientist, but it's irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. Authorities hid the radioactive plume forecast to avoid evacuation and so that people wouldn't avoid the food, right? Fukushima radiation dose equal to an X-ray is simply absurd when there was 1 million becquerels a kilogram detected at Fukushima schools. And so that's after decontamination, when 11 becquerels causes damage to the hearts of children. So here was New Scientists doing everything it can to trick you and deceive you and manipulate you. Even produced a study, an epidemic of fear. It's not an epidemic of fear when radiation health specialists, children with 11 becquerels a kilogram start to see heart problems. Radioactive urine in Fukushima poses small health risk. But they found strontium at 2,200 locations in Fukushima, for God's sakes. So, like, New Scientists is truly heartless and soulless media. My goodness. Radioactive urine poses small health risk, but right alongside of Tokyo and Chiba was 400,000 times the normal radioactive xenon, which burns a hole through your lung and causes lung cancers and other illnesses. And that thyroid abnormalities in 55% of Fukushima girls. So they say radioactive urine is not an issue, but it just defies reality that could happen. Hi, everybody. Fukushima cancer risk still low. New Scientist academic study. There's a street in Fukushima where 7 people died in 1 year. Just walking down the street, dropped dead. Do you know of another street on the planet where that happened? My apologies. And once again, I played the video for you. These are, they say cysts and nodes, but these are actually tumors. Because this is radiation. Once it starts, it continues. You can't stop it. 13,646 out of 40,000 when it used to be 1 in a million. And nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. But New Scientists got a study saying Fukushima increases risk of cancer, but not by much. And by the way, cancer is not the only illness or disease or autoimmune deficiencies or injury that you're going to get. Fukushima, and the worst study imaginable, Fukushima exposed children and workers okay for now. Imagine saying that. Imagine what kind of low life you got to be to produce a study to say that. Nuclear expert in Japan, plutonium, which is named after the devil, is everywhere. It is everywhere. After Fukushima reactors exploded, it's being redeposited in unanticipated locations, and that the black radioactive dust is just wherever you go. It's running right into the Pacific Ocean. They say, Fukushima, another study from New Scientist, Fukushima radiation releases no threat to the health, but 50 becquerels a kilogram, irreversible heart damage for children. And they say the limits right now is 100 becquerels per kilogram in food is considered safe. When we got studies showing this is unbelievably not true, see? New York Times, radiation small doses could actually be... Now you see some of these headlines repeated tonight. It's just because I'm trying to make a point. Don't let fear win. A study that They published a study, and then New Scientist ran it in their magazine to downplay what was happening. Isn't that the definition of evil? Why would you do something like that? Why be so evil? Why not get a real job, right? There's more to fear from nature than nuclear power. Think about that statement. More to fear from nature than nuclear power. But there's a significant rise in cancer risk within 5 years after exposure to low doses. And cancer is just one of 1,800 illnesses. Nuclear crisis. How safe is Japan food and water? Well, 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans, adults, lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. There is no safe limit. At what point are you going to take back your planet? At what point are you going to fight for your survival? Risk experts, why radiation fears are often over-exaggerated. Another study from New Scientist. Yet, the officials sharply raised the radiation levels for residents to get iodine pills, 75 times higher than the World Health Organization had recommended for children. What kind of demon would do that? What kind of monster would actually do that? What kind of creature would actually do that? What kind of soulless, spineless scumbag would actually do that? What kind of lunatic would do something like that? I can't believe the stalker now is on my new site. We're finding now that girls are having twice as many thyroid lumps as boys. And here's New Scientist with a study saying no radiation effect from Japan. Nuclear scientist. Nuclear power is safer than fossil fuel. You have an academic showing that a single atom in your lung can cause a cancer. 3 million children require treatment because of Chernobyl, and that many will die prematurely. United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan in 2000. 3 million children. So if you go to Wikipedia on Chernobyl, it'll tell you 28 people died. It doesn't tell you 600 helicopter pilots died for some reason. And it doesn't tell you stuff like that for some reason. The nuclear industry is a lunatic industry. It needs to be banned permanently from the entire planet. We have to ban it. It has to go. It's them or all 8 million species. Radioactive Fukushima children given the cancer all clear. Kids run on the street with radioactivity 134,000 becquerels a square meter. New Scientist is the definition of evil, isn't it? Tokyo drinking water is unsafe. If it's unsafe for infants, it's unsafe for everybody. That's how it actually works. So imagine if they had banned Tokyo drinking water for everybody. They banned it for infants because you would have had a spike of infants dying immediately, which happened anyway, of course. 27,000 becquerels a kilogram in cesium in a kindergarten, 200 kilometers from the Meltdown. Would you eat food from there? Tokyo tea leaves with 2,700 becquerels a kilogram of radioactive cesium picked by elementary school children. Would you drink that? Radioactive Fukushima children given cancer all clear. Lecturer tells the parents Tokyo radiation not so serious and to let the kids play outside. Wrap your mind around that statement. Let kids play outside. Just gargle and wash your hands. So the industry really we have to deal with this. We can't just pretend it's not happening. Diachi Elementary, 4 million becquerels a square meter of cesium. Just cesium. Just cesium. Of course, all the other isotopes are there. This is all they report on is cesium. Soil samples from a school in Chiba, which is 20 kilometers from Tokyo. 70% of the children tested in Kanto, a region that includes Tokyo, have radioactive cesium in their urine. This is absurd numbers. New Scientist academic study, Fukushima increases risk of cancer, but not by much. Extreme increases of mortality caused by cardiac diseases causes heart problems, heart attacks. There's the other side of that. In a single town, in a single month, an extra 12,695 people died compared to any other year in history. Was that a fluke, or did that have something to do with Fukushima? That obviously has to be every month. That can't just be 1 month. Another study showed 30,000 square kilometers in Japan is blanketed by radiation, not radioactive cesium, but by radiation. When they tell you it's blanketed by radioactive cesium, which is how the United Kingdom refers to it, you got to multiply it by 1,000. There's 1,000 other isotopes. It can't be just cesium. Cancer risk lower than feared for Fukushima locals. New Scientists selling all of humanity. Fukushima will start burning radioactive waste, 100,000 becquerels a kilogram to be incinerated. 1 billion pounds of radiation to be burnt in incinerators across Japan. 1 billion pounds. Each pound is a dirty bomb. That's a dirty bomb. There is no safe food in Japan anywhere. And the reactors are still melting down. Nuclear fuel rods removed from the plant. These are media pretending they're getting fuel out of the reactor 4, but that's actually reactor 4 right there. These buildings don't exist right here. Another fake study. That's 2012, by the way, that story over there, if you notice. They actually hate you. Nuclear crisis, how safe is Japan's food and water? Well, they abandoned all the communities and shops and hospitals and malls and banks, universities and hospitals. Inhaling just one hot particle can cause a cancer or 1,800 other illnesses. A single particle can cause a tumor. And cesium-137 immediately damages the heart muscle. It's not slow acting. So it causes heart attacks. When radioactive cesium enters the body, 75% lodges in muscle tissue, including the hearts. Xenon is known to cause dramatic increases in lung cancers. Bombards humans with powerful X-rays. Turns into cesium. This is a model of the plume covering the northern hemisphere of xenon. And we know in Washington State it was 450,000 times anything ever recorded before. So start wiping out all the insects, all the birds, all the animals, all the mammals. My apologies, man. Hang on. Now, I went and filled the boat up today. It was $196 because you can only use premium fuel for the outboards. And I took all the weight off the boat so it burns less fuel. And I put 100 in the truck. It says 300. And we raised $45 today, and there was Edward, you donated 20, and Organic Slant a few days ago donated 25. So we put $300 worth of fuel in it, and so the weather is looking good. It changed a little bit for tomorrow, but it's looking good for the next week. Mostly southwesterlies. which is offshore, coming offshore where I'm to. So we're going to go out and look for birds and whales and marine mammals for the next week. It took me all day to get the boat ready because we had the boat wrapped up because I was on expeditions on the interior, right? We were going across the province doing species count. All the species are missing. And we can't afford to go because they took down my main site, and so I put up this new YouTube channel. And by the way, you get my new YouTube channel. Let me show you for what it looked like for the last 5 hours. On my end, I want people to go to my home page and tell me if it's there. It's probably there now, but for the last 5 hours, it wasn't. This is what my home page looked like for the last 5 hours. Now, at the top of my page, as you can see, I got channel content and live streaming, right? Bookmarked. And I got Dana Durnford bookmarked. That page disappeared. And looked like that for about 5 hours a day. But I was able to access that, and sometimes that would show up like that and showed no uploads. And so upcoming live streams, it showed past live streams. No, this channel has no videos. You can see that, right? Uploads, it shows this channel has no videos. And then mostly I was getting that page there, blank page. They had, I'm not sure what's going on, but they had gotten rid of me for about 5 hours today. There's links below this video you can donate, and we're desperate for donations to keep this expedition going before the season runs out. And we don't, now that I think we got $200 left, $250. We done repairs last week for $700, and then $300 on fuel today. So that's 40 gallons on the Zodiac. So that I can, if I don't push it hard, I can get a week out of that hopefully. And I was charging the batteries up today. One battery don't seem to be holding a charge, but the other battery is, so I can run on double batteries. As long as the engine starts, that's good enough. Let's keep going here. United States hit with extremely large peaks of Fukushima radioactive material. My goodness. Significant amount of plutonium released for months, and radioactivity from the plant measured globally, and blanketed the entire northern hemisphere. The entire northern hemisphere got covered in radioactive fallout. I can show you, if you bear with me 1 minute, I'll show you actually some of those studies. There you go. Because I put little flags in on each of the countries. Don't ask me why. That's all good. Just takes a second for it to load because instead of being just screen captures, I turned it into little videos. So it takes just a few extra moments to load. There we go. We're good. Okay, here we go. Let that load up. That's pretty quick. So the airborne radiation over the entire northern hemisphere the Baltic Sea radiation was found all over the northern hemisphere. Global and local cancer risk from Fukushima. Global cancer risk from Fukushima. Radioactive fallout in Saudi Arabia from Fukushima. Airborne radioactive fallout in the Arctic from Fukushima. Behavior of radioactive cesium during incineration of radiation. Well, 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures is not going to hurt radiation. You're just going to liberate it into the air, and that's going to get carried to North America. Arrival of radionuclides released by Fukushima in the Canary Islands. This is insane, by the way. Decontamination of radioactivity from contaminated vegetables. Why would you do a study like that for? You can't decontaminate vegetables. It's simply not... Like, say you use a carrot peeler to peel off the outer layer. The carrot peeler becomes radioactive. You can take clean carrots and peel them. They become radioactive. You can't decontaminate it. Observation of Fukushima fallout in Great Britain. Here we go, we'll get through it. Over Germany. Over Korea. Over Spain. Radioactive fallout over Russia. And radioactive fallout over Romania. Radioactive fallout over Darwin, Australia from Fukushima. Radioactive fallout over Italy. I don't know why I put the flags in there, because it's a lot of work to do that. You got to download everything. You got to use the green screen to get it all in there. France, radioactive fallout over Vietnam. I think it's just because it tells the story better, hopefully. I'm sorry. Radioactive fallout over Vietnam, over Canada. Radioactive fallout over Taiwan. Radioactive fallout over Monaco. We're almost through it. Over China, Beijing. Radioactive fallout over Greece from Fukushima. Over Liberia Peninsula. Radioactive fallout over European locations. And the last one, radioactive fallout over southern Poland. So, when you see them talking about blanketed the entire northern hemisphere, blanketed the entire northern hemisphere, blanketed the entire northern hemisphere, then I got the evidence that that's simply being polite. Rain with 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131 per liter fell on the U.S. during post-Fukushima. That was sustained. Everyone on Earth has been irradiated by Fukushima. 1 million becquerels a square meter over the west coast of northern hemisphere. Nuclear industry tried to bury the truth. 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129 in the rain. 220 million atoms. That was an Ottawa study. Medical Journal, 14,000 U.S. deaths after Fukushima fallout. That was updated to 20,000. That was just in a short time frame right after it happened. And most of these were from heart attacks. It was a spike in heart attacks, and the studies had showed that radioactive fallout had landed in those areas. And so Organic Slant is calling in. Yeah, hi there, bud. He hung up accidentally. There he goes again. Yeah, hi, Mark.
I'm sorry. Hey, this is why my phone was in my pocket and it just started ringing, and then I just hung up right away. Then at the last second, I said, "Hey, that was Dana's number."
Yeah, and I'm live.
Yeah. So no, real quick here. I didn't want to take you too much time. Yeah, I had problems with that other day. With that, I got that all mixed up. It was just that when I got on, I was like, I thought I was like the number 24.
You were. It was.
Hey, number 24 is the troll. I'm like, hey, wait.
No, I hear you, man. It's okay, buddy. Don't worry about it. It's all good, right? No, it's all good.
Yeah, I sent you it. I think 20 or 25 bucks.
25, yeah. Yeah, I just I read out the donations that I got earlier tonight, and I'm live right now anyway. But I'll give a shout out. I'll give a shout out. Okay, my friend. Thank you again. Now, yeah. Okay, bye bye. That was organic slant. He had butt dialed me. 23% higher incidence of childhood leukemia within 16 kilometers of nuclear facilities. So nuclear, no matter how you look at it, is incredibly brutal, yeah? We got to stop these sorts of reports coming out. That was Geraldine Thomas from, not King's College, but Imperial College in the United Kingdom. She's a notorious, disgusting scumbag. 43% of kids have thyroid abnormalities in new Fukushima tests. 43%. Radiation expert, 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. Japan's limit is, they don't really got a limit. They claim they're no more than 100 becquerels a kilogram is what they're selling. Trust me, don't eat Japanese food. And if your supermarkets are selling Japanese food, get in their face and tell them to get rid of it. Stop poisoning everybody. Do it repeatedly. Have your friends do it. We need a movement of people fighting back against this evil, despicable, disgusting, vicious, murderous industry. Before Fukushima, 100 becquerels a kilogram is nuclear waste. After 100 becquerels a kilogram is safe to eat. Children's health problems are increasing. Incurable stomach aches, chest pains, nosebleeds that don't stop, diarrheas. You don't want to eat food from Japan under any circumstances. Colombian medical professor inhaling just one hot particle can cause cancer. And so 100 becquerels a kilogram is 100 hot particles. You don't want to be eating it. Fox is iodine 131 killing babies in Philadelphia. Deaths up 48% since radiation levels spiked in the tap water, in their drinking water. Wrap your mind around that, the drinking water. Fukushima doctor, we need outside help. Japan people are not listening. We are in very bad condition, especially for children. Please help. We have answered that call. Report how the brainwashing was done in Fukushima. Tweets paint a propaganda effort by the Japanese government that would make Goebbels and Edward Bernays proud. These are history's notorious propaganda machines. It really is, right? It really is. What they've done, I don't understand why they hate us so much. Why they hate all the species so much. They will sacrifice every species, every human on the planet for nuclear. If that's not a cult, well, what is? Head of Tokyo Area Medical Clinic, risk for internal exposure 200 to 600 times greater than the risk from external exposure. It's actually 1 billion times. It's in your body, it's pulsing energy every second for the rest of your life. And it wrecks your DNA. It irradiates all your other organs, and it destroys your chromosomes and creates cancers. It wrecks your immune system, and it makes you more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless to you. TIPCO, send us people who don't mind dying. Does that sound like things are going well? Top cancer doctor. I keep using these couple of headlines because they're so important. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. Don't eat food from Japan. Like, seriously, don't eat anything from Japan. Don't eat anything grown in British Columbia or in California. Infant deaths also up in BC, Canada after Fukushima. British Columbia was wiped out. We'd done the expeditions out there for years. The species disappeared permanently. They never came back. Idaho TV data showed a large spike in deaths, particularly infants' deaths, in the 14 weeks following the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. They're 5,500 miles away. So you don't want to eat food close to the area that happened. And you don't want to eat anything from Idaho. Obviously, it was highly radioactive. New document shows iodine-131 contamination was 350% of the highest amount reported. 54,000 becquerels a kilogram in spinach, 100 kilometers from Fukushima. You see these farmers' fields and the tractors? They picked up the bags to trick the farmers into going back to work. The environment abruptly changed for half of Japan. Harvard website, media is blindly reporting TEPCO's false radiation levels. The press won't report the truth. It's still scary in Tokyo. People move away due to hotspots. Radiation fallout poses a growing threat. 2,600 cattle contaminated. More vegetables at unsafe level. There is no centralized system in 2011, just voluntary tests. So even though they had this major radiation event, they never had any universities or institutions or government agencies testing food. They had voluntarily tests. So the cover-up was immediate, and it was vicious, and it's still ongoing, and it's really not acceptable no matter how you look at it. The only farmer left in Fukushima town ships broccoli and lettuce to the supermarkets. Yeah, well, they're going to be tasty and have a rich flavor, then they kill you. Radiation you can't taste it or smell it or hear it or feel it or touch it or pick it up, but it's lethal, see? The only farmer left in town. So the government didn't act responsibly. It didn't say, hey, you can't grow food and ship it. They said, hey, here's some seeds. What do you need? We'll get it to you. There are no sparrows, says bird watchers. Downtown area was void of any form of birds. They were wiped out. And you will be too if you eat that food. Officials back from Fukushima, an invisible blanket of death covers everything. It's a nightmare. LA Times, parents suspect heart defects related to Fukushima. Former World Health Organization expert blasts United Nations Fukushima report, warns of a cancer spike. Well, there was a cancer spike. Where's it to? Right, there was 865,000 excess cancers in 2012. And cancer is just one of 1,800 illnesses from radiation. And most people down there don't have health care and are not in those statistics. See? Shocked major Japan paper. Cancer risks in Fukushima probably infinitesimal. More radioactive contamination should be allowed in food and where people live. And don't question burning disaster debris. In fact, some professors who protested the burning of those dirty bombs were arrested and beaten on top of that. So reactors are not repaired at all. With one more quake, Japan will cease to exist. and the resulting destruction will take half the planet along with it. So what they're talking about is one more earthquake, they restart a chain reaction. The radioactive fallout contaminates all of Japan and half the planet. It doesn't blow up Japan or half the planet. It radiates it with radioactive fallout. Because that's permanent. That's global warming, by the way. Pulse and energy every second. Radiation checks of food in Japan are only 1% of what Belarus checked in the past year. And so that Geiger counter can only find gamma. Like my Geiger counter can only find gamma. It's not going to find alpha or neutrons or beta. And you better be worried about all of them, not just gamma. And that's not the way you would check food. They're gooey ducks they got there. You're supposed to use a $50,000 Geiger counter. You're supposed to dry them out and everything else, right? Fukushima farmers hope that ducks will eat up the radiation. But what that really means is they're incapable of appreciating that they shouldn't be farming, see? They're incapable of understanding the significance of just a single meal of this stuff. Can destroy your life or your loved ones or your children's life. Not can, but will. This is not up for debate because we have the numbers across Japan. I'm not doing this because I'm bored. This is desperation, right? To get the truth out there. They just took down my site with 24,000 subscribers, 1,600 presentations, with no warning, no nothing. They just took it down, never said nothing, and they won't put it back up. So I have this new site here with 70 subscribers. Well, 77 the last time I checked. It's slowly grown over the last couple of days. We got 78 now. It's very demoralizing to have your site taken down when you work so hard for so long. But we still got to tell the story. We still got to do the research, right? Kyoto News uses the term hot zones to describe Miyagi, Iwate, Chiba prefectures, not just Fukushima. And a lot of that food was coming out of there for the Olympics. They were planning on poisoning 40 million visitors. Right? They were planning on murdering 40 million visitors with radioactive food, and they go back home and die later. All the athletes that went to the Olympics will most likely get sick over the next couple of years, every one of them. I can't see how they don't and won't. Persons living 170 miles from Fukushima shows dangerously high radiation levels. So nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan, April 6th. People should stay home. So Taiwan and South Korea warned their countrymen and women and children to stay home to avoid the Fukushima radioactive plumes. Canada and the United States said there was no plumes, even though we had the worst plumes. It's absurd, right? It really is. It's so evil, it defies any rationale that they done that. It defies any logic that they continue to do it. It shows you that the industry, the people that work in the nuclear industry, are ruthless mass murderers, are ecocide and omnicide rather, intense. It's absurd. Pneumonia cases surged in Japan. You've seen the same thing after Chernobyl, which means you're now poisoned with radiation, right? University of Pittsburgh radiation expert, child cancer risk doubles if exposed to just a couple of x-rays worth of radiation during pregnancy. Well, they're all going to get that dose now without going to the hospital because the radioactive fallout, it pulses energy. It could pulse at 20 feet in a symmetrical circles. Just a single atom. Put 2 million atoms in the head of a needle, you can't see it. So just a single atom is brutal. It's going to do that forever and ever and ever, pulse this energy. If there's another atom within 5, 10, 15 feet, it's pulsing. Those pulses hit each other. They're pulsing almost at the speed of light. So when they hit each other, they change directions. It's known as a braking effect. And the Germans have a word for Bromson lung effect. But what it does is it creates an X-ray type environment. This sterilized all the insects in increments over the last 10 years. And this is why we've seen an absolutely free fall of all species over the last 10 years, which is the research we're doing right now. And we can quantify all of these statements with the documentation, which is what I do all the time, right? That's the idea, was to run an educational program and provide the documentation. So they took down my site because I blast big, enormous holes in their narratives, right? German government studied children living near nuclear plants have doubled the leukemia rates, higher incidences of solid cancers, and the reactors cannot prevent radiation from escaping. Quite the contrary, they hemorrhage radiation. The fuel pools, as the fuel pools get older, they're filled up with reactor cores with no containment, still splitting the atom. So say a reactor powers 1 million homes. It does that by splitting the atoms, see? So, but it becomes brittle after about 18 months, and they take the majority of the core out and they put it in a pool. That pool is boiled off almost every day, 120,000 liters. That is saturated with the splitting of the atom. That gets into the water's saturated, heats up and boils off. So you have to replace that water every day with special water, by the way, to stop a chain reaction from starting. But it's still splitting the atom. So as you fill up that pool decade after decade, right? So every 18 months, you got a million, the energy of 1 million homes worth of power pulsating in those pools of splitting the atoms. There's no containment, see? So what happens is those per liter, you're talking trillions of isotopes per liter in 440 reactor pools worldwide every day. So 440 reactor pools is the energy of 440 million people. That's released into the environment, pulsing energy every second. But that's done every day. So every day the ecosystem bioaccumulates all this radiation. This is global warming. And this is going to go on forever. They knew this back in the 50s and 60s, how this was going to work, and they went ahead and done it anyway. And then they try to blame it on your tin cans, your pop bottles, and your cardboard. But it's actually all the nuclear testing, all the nuclear dumping, all the fuel pools, every time they change the reactor core, they have to open the containment. Then all the radiation escapes, and then they put the fuel in a pool where it's still splitting the atom. That's liberated into the environment all day. And as the pool gets older, there's more radiation emitted every single day. So the numbers only go up every day, every year. Worldwide, we see this phenomenon. That's the Achilles heel of humanity and the 8 million species. These are those fuel pools. 276,000 becquerels a kilogram of radioactive cesium from soil samples per kilogram. Almost 18 million becquerels a square meter. 18 million. Let me do the math for you right quick here. Divided by 276. So 18 million divided by 276,000, 65. 65. So whenever you see a kilogram, you want to multiply or divide it or multiply it by 65 to get a square meter. So the food that's grown in a square meter around Tokyo, for instance, or anywhere from Fukushima to Tokyo, you're looking at around 18 million becquerels per square meter. But they're only talking about cesium. Radiation doesn't exist in just one isotope. It's going to be saturated with plutonium. It's going to be saturated with americium and neptunium and strontium, and more importantly with curium, fission products, which is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods. And the curium isotopes, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And plutonium, you need thick lead shielding. Right? And so when they tell you cesium, it means they hate you. When you hear the word cesium, it's because they actually despise you. Physicians report increased cancers around nuclear sites, birth defects, stillbirths, spontaneous abortions. Now, the interesting thing, I just explained to you about fuel pools and how they're emitting all of this radiation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 300 years after the plant is closed. That's emitted. All nuclear dumps and holding sites are vented. All nuclear casts are vented. Okay, keep that in mind for what I'm going to show you. Because we discovered, accidentally on purpose, a phenomenon that we didn't really understand. And because, as I explained to you, all this radiation emitted from a nuclear power plant. Well, if you go look up pictures of nuclear power plants, there's the one scary phenomenon. Do you see it? It's farms as far as you can see. Now, that wasn't just a one-off. Almost every nuclear power plant that I found was surrounded by farms. Some of them are in big cities, so it's the same thing. They poison you that way, right? But building a nuclear power plant in farmland is not an accident. This is not an accident. This is actually on purpose. Because they know how much radiation is coming out of there. Without the farms, it's going to bioaccumulate there. So the farms is going to end up in the food, and who's going to eat the food? So you're going to see this absurd spike in Alzheimer's and dementia and autism, heart problems and liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, 1,800 illnesses. So they didn't build these sites in farmland because they couldn't find a better spot. They done it so they can poison you. And they knew that the farms were going to suck up radiation. I'll show you some studies. They done the studies showing grapevines suck up radiation, and the strawberries suck up radiation, and that wheat sucks up radiation, and tomato plants suck up radiation, and fruit plants will suck up radiation, and how their monitoring systems, plants suck up radiation, right? Potatoes are sucking up the radiation. Fruit plants and tree roots, how they suck up radiation is going to be applicable to all plants, right? Root inhabit the soil. Meadows suck up, so the cows and the sheep and the animals are all sucking up radiation. And fruit trees and everything else are sucking up radiation. So that's not an accident. That even this is a picture of a future nuclear plant surrounded by farms. So the plants are always hemorrhaging absurd amount of radiation, and they're surrounded by farms. Is that not absurd? Is that not evil? Is that not the very definition of evil? And hate. Why do they hate us? Why do they hate all the species so much? What did we ever do to them? Right up to the nuke plants themselves. As far as you can see, farms. What a shock it was when I started looking for pictures of nuclear power plants. I expected to see a lot, but I didn't expect to see almost every single picture was going to be a nuclear power plant surrounded by farms. That absolutely, I will never get over the shock of the implications of these pictures. This is terrorism, what they're doing to us. This is absurd contempt that they done that. And that the regulators willingly and gladly obliged them to be in a position to do this. Try wrapping your mind around it. Do you think this is an accident? That they built all of these nuclear power plants in farmland? And as you go back throughout history, this is what you see. This is an agenda to exterminate everybody and all species. That's what nuclear power is. It's an enemy of everyone, including them, by the way. What a bizarre, hateful, disgusting, despicable group of people the nuclear industry turned out to be, yes? Half the people in Japan were close to being evacuated. And they claimed they didn't evacuate them, because they claimed that the fuel pools didn't get damaged or the reactor cores. That's reactor 3, 190-foot building totally gone, and the fuel pools are gone and the reactor cores are gone. Now, for instance, that's just one of them. And then he came out and he said they didn't evacuate half the people because it looks like that. That's both the official pictures. But it actually looks like this. So they pretended that it looks like that so they didn't evacuate half the people in Japan. So nuclear power with those types of attributes, it's simply not worth it, right? It's better if we all freeze to death with no power than nuclear power. Fukushima official. Groups demanding measures to protect people from radiation are lefty shits. And I can't help but only feel pity for their lack of intelligence. Pity. That person can't feel pity. Japanese Deputy Prime Minister talks about learning from the Nazis. And previously said to let the elderly people to hurry up and die. They actually said people 60 and older should be prepared to die at Fukushima nuclear meltdown in the official notebooks of 311. Former Prime Minister Khan, evacuation after Fukushima could have reached 50 million people. It was supposed to, but they decided to pretend it didn't happen. And then by proxy, they believed their own lie for the last 10 years. Now they're like, no, the food is safe. The food can never be safe. You're growing it in a nuclear wasteland. And so I got the boat in the water. We got almost $200 of fuel in it. And I got $100 of fuel in the truck because you can't move the boat without moving the truck, obviously. And the boat's a heavy boat and it burns a lot of fuel just to move it. But once I get it in the water, it's not so bad. And we're going to go out and start looking for species. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Because I can live stream from the ocean, but the video quality is not that good. I might just do it, just a little short videos, if I see something interesting, right? But at the same time, I'll shoot a high quality, and then that night, I can show you the high quality. The Japan government promotes the idea that you're racist if you avoid Fukushima products, and that nuclear activists to be constantly spied upon, which is what they're doing with me and people like Kevin Blanche too, right? And anybody else that's speaking out. Okay, well, I had a long day. I got so much I'd like to cover, there's just no way to cover it all. There's really not, right? I just got too much piled up here. We're never going to get through it all. Every amount of radiation exposure increases your risk to cancer. There is no safe levels of radiation. So if you're eating Japanese food, you're bioaccumulating more and more and more. It's absurd to do that. Don't do that. And the people that own the shops, tell them that you're not going to shop there if they're selling Japanese food. See, it's radioactive. Like, they had multiple nuclear reactors melt down. Chernobyl was a 200-ton reactor. Fukushima reactors were 800 tons. Chernobyl's reactors were moderated with graphite. Fukushima is not. They're pure uranium, pure plutonium. They're at least 100 times more fuel per reactor. And Chernobyl was a brand new reactor. Fukushimas were 40 years old with 40 years of fuel at the top of the buildings. That was lost too. I'm just trying to help you, and I'm trying to save you. They're trying to murder you. Do yourself a favor. Don't bioaccumulate the radiation, yeah? Remind everybody, because we are struggling to survive now. They took down my website. So that's the video right there you're watching on my channel right now. And they're trying to murder you. If you scroll down below the video, you'll see 2 links. They're directly to me. That's how you can donate. We're trying to raise a couple of $100 to cover fuel and expenses that we just went through. Because otherwise we're going to run out of money in no time. We're not going to be able to keep the operation afloat. So even though I only got 78 subscribers, when just a week ago I had 24,000, we still got to try to do the research, right? And so if you can donate $5 or $10 towards the fuel, it goes a long way. And those links are directly to my site to donate. And that's the only 2 ways you can donate to me, right? Just so that you know. Okay, well, let's call it a night. Because it's 10 after 10 now, where I'm to. I'm going to get up tomorrow morning and take off and get out on the ocean, weather permitting. It looks good. It's still summertime, so it should hold steady for another couple of 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And if I do, so if I go out in the boat, then I'm home every day, and we could try to keep this building the site. If I go back out on the research expedition on the interior, I'm going to be 400 or 500 kilometers away from home, and it's going to be hard to keep building the site, right? And because he just took down my channel that I had for over 12 years with 1,600 videos, I have no choice but to try to rebuild my site. We can't give up, right? And we can't go away. We have to educate the population. So I'll come in and do a shout out for everybody. Organic Slant said to say hi to everybody. Steve White, good night, Stephen. Lady J Homestead, good night. You're welcome. Dana Nasana, hi Dana. Two guys going fishing is a mandate. Yeah. That's the problem with what I do. It's so hard to get people interested in what I'm doing. Anna C3. Blue Star Warrior. Hugs for everybody. And Sally. Heartsock. Yeah, you found me. This is me. Thank you, Sally. Yeah, no, they disappeared me, and it's been very difficult to recover. Timo, Ori, Kevin Blanche, book burning is what they did, yeah. Kevin calls the removal of my videos, my presentations, book burning, and that's appropriate. Yeah, long, hard court road this journey has been, Kevin, I bet. Tom Morris, thank you, everybody. I only serve one king, found me. Ella. Hi, Ella. And Jetton and Corp. Hi there. Yeah, a few people have, you folks are starting to find me. Magic Mushroom Prophet, there's another regular, found me. Obsolete Optics. That's pretty cool. A lot of you folks found me, and a lot will watch this later tonight, I'm sure, other people. Hugs for everybody that is watching it, and I don't get a shout out because I don't know who you are, but hugs for you and your friends and your families and your loved ones. Please share this video so your friends and families and loved ones and strangers don't accidentally eat that degenerate scumbag Japanese radioactive food and get sick. Don't buy Japanese, and if the shop sells it, tell them you don't appreciate them selling radioactive food and direct them to this video. We got the evidence. Our evidence is unassailable. We only deal in facts, and we provide it when we're talking, which is, by the way, an absurd amount of work. Steve Edwards, thank you. Remember, folks, if you can donate $5 or $10, and a few of you do it, that goes a long way. It goes a long way to fuel this operation. And I'm going to head back out on the ocean if everything goes right tomorrow. If not, then the next day. We're fueled up. The boat's cleaned up. Looks good. I haven't tested the boat this year, but I did fire it up last month, so everything should be okay. I do a lot of maintenance, so I'm expecting no issues. We'll deal with it. Hugs for everybody. Good night, everybody. God bless you and your loved ones. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Take care.